Hi, this is Julia Chambers presenting Library Cartoons, a literature review of cartoons with library themes for Library 204 class. I thought I'd start this presentation with a cartoon I came across in my research. Here, an older woman is holding a boy's hand walking through the stacks of a library saying, "Honey, it's a library," kind of an early version of the World Wide Web. Why analyze cartoons? Well, scholars from a wide range of disciplines have asked this question. Their research looks at the sociological value of cartoons, making the arguments that cartoons reflect public perception or provide emotional insight to the human experience, or have the power to influence public opinion. Many point to the historical value of cartoons, and others study the comic relief they can provide for difficult issues. But very little research has been dedicated specifically to cartoons with library themes, yet they exist in abundance and are powerful formats for social commentary. To give a brief example, this is an image of the two lion statues, Patience and Fortitude, guarding the entrance to the New York City Public Library, published in The New Yorker in 1938. Notice that they're both reading books, and the caption says, "A revised statuary for the city of tomorrow." Well, 55 years later, we see a very similar cartoon, also published in The New Yorker in 1993. But here, Patience and Fortitude are watching videos on TV. And finally, in 2004, Patience has gone back to books, but Fortitude appears to be surfing the net. So times change, but social commentary remains consistent in the cartoon format. First, a historical snapshot. Well, cartoons began to appear regularly in U.S. newspapers in the late 1880s. From the beginning, these cartoons had a satirical and political bent, though one scholar notes that there was a decided shift in the early 20th century from political to social themes. Cartoons with library themes weren't particularly common, but there were quite a few at the turn of the century, referring to Andrew Carnegie's libraries. This image, called The Library Comin', was first published in the Detroit Journal in December 1902. And this is Carnegie here presenting his library to the taxpayers of Detroit, the cartoon mocking the taxpayers' burden of maintaining a Carnegie library. Between the early 1900s and World War II, satire continued to be popular in editorial and political cartoons, but new themes emerged in the genre. In the 20s, we begin to see comic strips of today with family or child themes, and we tend to see less satire, more humor entering the cartoon form. Libraries are still not a very common theme. However, there was a flourishing of librarian superhero cartoons mid-century. The most famous, perhaps, was Batgirl, also known as Barbara Gordon, a Gotham City librarian introduced by Detective Comics in 1967. And here you see her first transformation into Batgirl. Millennium cartoons show a blossoming of library themes. One study looked at 255 library cartoons and categorized them into 8 thematic groups, showing commentary on librarians, the library itself, and the internet, to name a few. Within these groups, there were cartoons with overt political undertones. For example, the image shown here has the 4 infamous Connecticut librarians protecting the right to patron record privacy after receiving warrants relating to the Patriot Act. Since the mid-90s, there's been a wealth of cartoons with themes relating to technology and the digitization of the library. Also, commentary questioning the value of libraries in the age of Google. This comic by Griselda is an image of a desk with a computer being supported by stacks of books, and the caption says, "We've found a use for all the old books." So what exactly are library cartoons saying, and does it matter? The current literature of library cartoons has a bit of a devil versus angel quality in its collective analysis. On the one hand, research focuses on the cartoon's portrayal of a negative public perception of libraries. These researchers suggest that the public feels that libraries are obsolete and that books are on their way out, that librarians can be helpful but are mostly burnt out, and that the internet is now the new library. Other researchers have focused more on the value of library cartoons. They argue that cartoons offer historical insight to the profession, can serve to promote the value of research, and act as guides to information workers for making changes that will improve their image. To benefit from the study of library cartoons, it's important to look at the positive effect cartoons can have on the public. Some scholars argue that cartoons can provide insight to public emotion as well as influence public opinion. For instance, the cartoon shown here is that of the cartoon shown here, there's a sign on the door of this bookish-looking library that says, "Now closed Mondays and Saturdays due to cuts in revenue." The boy walking away is saying, "Guess I'll go play some video games," which is slightly ironic now that libraries are offering gaming, but I think the point is clear that unless we keep libraries open, children are going to stop reading. Another value of library cartoons is that they can reach illiterate populations or non-English speakers. One research study has even shown that editorial cartoons have a higher rate of swaying personal opinion than written editorials. Library cartoons can also serve as a wake-up call and consequently act as an agent of change. Scholars have conducted studies on specific editorial cartoons supporting this theory. And finally, I've mentioned the historical value of studying library cartoons. Some scholars argue that editorial cartoons, which often escape censorship, can provide significant insight to future generations, helping to understand difficult moments in history, or even just to get some perspective. And speaking of perspective, in closing, I'd like to show these two images. Both are mocking the shortage of library hours. On the left, the sign says, "This library open every other Monday from 9:58 a.m. to 10 a.m. And on the right, the sign says, "Notice budget cuts. Now open every third Tuesday of odd number months during leap years." Interestingly, these two cartoons were published over 100 years apart. Looking at satirical themes that replicate a century apart in the history of libraries can perhaps provide some perspective, as well as retrospective comic relief to some of the current worries and threats facing libraries today. Thank you.